news like Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, we've had a pretty tumultuous last year, and now, of course, we're trying to recover. This is the recovery time, really, from COVID, from the lockdown. Even though we're living in a COVID continuous world, there is the sight of a vaccine. But what about the economy? Because that's also been hurt last year. Can the budget actually fix this problem? What are the expectations from the union budget? Of course, when you speak to economists, they say the main thing is to bring back spend into the economy, to work on the infrastructure, to actually put money back in the pockets of the people. But will the budget be able to deliver in all this? Well, joining me today on the roundtable are a panel of experts. We have Rajiv Chandrasekhar, BJP national spokesperson, Shankar Iyer, he is the author of Accidental India and Gated Republic and an economist, and Sanjay Baru, also an economist and an author. He recently edited Beyond COVID's Shadow. So Rajiv, there's a pretty tall order really for the government at the center. What are the things that one can look for in the budget to revive a lockdown economy?
You haven't been reading the papers recently, but the economy is reviving. And there is a reasonably sharp V-shaped recovery from the minus 23.9 in the...
The BJP believes what is being read in the papers, but we'll take your word.
I mean, I'm talking about what the RBI said yesterday. So, I mean, if you have a problem with the BJP, then you should probably take it up with the RBI. They put out a statement yesterday that says that Q3 will be, for the first time in 2 quarters, in the positive GDP growth territory. And they expect effectively Q4 to be a significant growth quarter. And that if you just extrapolate that growth and you look at 21-22, you are looking at double-digit growths in that year. So from the budget, if you ask me from the budget, what I expect or what people generally who are following the economy expect is that the growth will be sustained beyond 21-22. Everybody expects 21-22 to be a growth year, partly because of the fact that there is momentum from the recovery, and partly from the fact that there is that minus 7.7 or minus 7.5 contraction of the economy that has to be made good. But will that growth continue into 22-23 and 23-24 is something that this budget can answer. And the finance minister has said in some of the conversations I read in the media that she is working on a budget that will deliver medium to long-term sustainable growth. So from my point of view, the fact that there is a recovery underway and it's a V-shaped recovery is out there for everybody to see. The real challenge now is to make that recovery move to something that is more long-term and more sustained.
Dr. Baru, how real is this V-shaped recovery that we are being told that is happening?
No, I don't think you've been told that. I don't think this is a question of somebody telling you that. It is.
I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it. I'm not. All I hear is people who want jobs, people who've lost their incomes. Nothing is being done in terms of that. So the V-shaped recovery is all. Is it just?
No, before you allow the other panelists to speak, let me just intervene. I think nobody is disputing the fact that the COVID effect or the COVID impact or the COVID shock on the economy has been fairly deep and very significant. And that is not just true for India. I mean, big nations like the US and big Western economies are continuing to struggle. The world is, in a sense, quite frankly surprised at the rate at which we are bouncing back. And that has a lot to do with the fact that we had an early lockdown rather than a belated lockdown like most of the Western economies have adopted. So there is a method that we followed. We are, in a sense, reaping some fruits of that method. The Western economies continue to be languishing, but to argue that there is no recovery is to ignore the facts. I'm sorry to just say it as bluntly as that.
Let Sanjay take this question then.
No contradiction between what Mr. Chandrasekhar is saying and what you hear people say, because the letter to keep in our mind is not V, but the letter to keep in our mind is K. There is a V-shaped recovery for certain segments of the economy, for certain categories of the society, and there is a reversal of fortunes for others. We have always had a dual economy, but the lockdown, the migrant crisis, the slowdown of various sectors as a result of which the backward linkages into the small scale industries, MSME sectors, etc. If you take the totality of the situation, the overall average rate of growth, of course, is picking up, but the average is always an average. There are sectors with positive rates of growth. There are still sectors with negative rates of growth. And therefore, I think the concern for the political leadership of the country has to be ensured that the we is for everyone and not just for some segments of society. Billionaires are becoming bigger billionaires while unemployment has increased, jobs available have gone down, and migrants who left cities are not able to find jobs when they come back. So we have a dual economy whose duality has been accentuated over the last 1 year. That's my first point. My second point is that when we talk about growth and sustainability of growth and the future of growth, we have to remember that for the first 15 years of this century, from 2000 to around 2015 or so, the average rate of growth for the Indian economy was around 7.5. And in the last 4 or 5 years, the average rate is far below 7.5. There can be dispute on what exactly is the number, and there are various estimates, but certainly nobody claims that in the last 5 years we've had an average rate of growth of 7.5. So the question going forward is, can we return to the growth trajectory that we were on? The India Rising story was based on the fact that India was rising at 7.5% per annum in the first 15 years of this century. Can we return to that? And I think there's a big question mark, and I'll explain why there's a question mark and stop. The question mark is because in the first 15 years of this century, you saw the rate of investment and the rate of saving rising together to a peak of around 35, 36, 37%. But in the last few years, 4 or 5 years, we've seen a decline both in the rate of investment and in the rate of saving, as well as an increase in fiscal deficit. So there is a constraint operating on this on the growth, and it remains to be seen how the government intends to ease this constraint. There's an investment constraint, there's a saving constraint, there's a fiscal constraint. And finally, there's an external constraint. Our exports have not done well, and the world economy has not been particularly helpful in pushing our exports. So I think the situation is not as sanguine as one would like it to be. There are areas of positive performance, but the concerns are far larger than can be dismissed away with just saying there's a V-shaped recovery.
Some people are saying that this is really the Modi government's 91 moment. How does he revive spending and investment?
I really hope they don't see it as a 1991 moment, and that would be a great blunder, because the issues which we faced in 1991 and the issues that we face today are vastly different. To your earlier question, whether there is a recovery or not, it lies in the eye of the beholder, and where you are poised on the K. A lot of people on the K are between the upper leg and the lower leg, and a lot of people have slid down the lower leg of the K. The point is, we must remember that India went from a slowdown into a lockdown into a contraction and is trying to emerge out. Now, a V-shaped recovery is graphic and it's sort of dramatic, but if you dive into the water and when you rise, the shape will be V. And all recoveries across the world have been V. You should look at the Chinese economy. It has also had a V recovery, because when you plunge down that kind of level, you will rise also similar. The question about that we face today is that everything that we were hurting, we had 8 quarters of slowdown, and those factors are operation. Now we have a larger inventory of sins to deal with. And the biggest problem that the budget will have to deal with is find the resources to do whatever is necessary to do. And second point is, how do they make right what they have not been able to fix for years, which is the banking system. And just now the banking system is under the mask of moratorium. And so we don't know what comorbidities lie under that mask. And when we see that. So for Nirmala Sitharaman, it's a huge challenge. I mean, the huge challenge is to first, fiscal deficit of both state and central governments is estimated at around 14%. That of the center at about 7.5%. Total, the distance between income and expenditure of governments of India, state and center, is around 20 lakh crore, never before. And this is going to be a binding constraint on whatever we try to do. So what does the government do? Will it sort of give up its political stance on disinvestment, on privatization? Will it impose a tax on all this billionaires that, the dollar billionaires who have gained. I mean, there are people who have gained billions of dollars, and there are billions who have lost everything. Millions who have lost everything. So we are at an intersection, an inflection point, and maybe in that way you could say that this could be the next liberalization movement, because if you want to plan for a world that is reconfiguring supply chains, business models, technology, digitization, climate change, you will have to think for the next 10 years and how do you plan for it?
Rajiv, your take on also, is this the moment, the 91 moment, or is something strong can be done? Huh?
No, before we get into whether it's 91 or 2008 or 1885, I want to just respond to Sanjay and Shankar. I actually don't think that there is much disagreement on anything that anybody is saying, excepting for whether the recovery is to be called a recovery or it is somebody's imagination. So leave that to the side, let the numbers say what they say. Look, what I think Sanjay makes a good point, which is that one of the important elements of the shock, COVID shock, has been the weak and vulnerable, the self-employed, and it is across the board. There's a report that's come out that there is an estimated job loss across the world of about 300 to 350 million, livelihoods lost as a consequence of COVID. This is not something, I mean, what I'm saying is, I'm not downplaying the issue, but I'm saying that that is a known consequence of this impact. And a recovery is not a mutually exclusive issue to that problem being solved. In my opinion, recovery is the first stage to addressing the other aspects of the shock of COVID, which is clearly what Sanjay is saying is right, that while the numbers on an aggregate basis may seem like we have recovered, it is clear that the GDP pie before the COVID and after the COVID have altered significantly. So the services sectors, the technology sectors have grown significantly in this time, and many other sectors have dropped off, as Sanjay said. But that does not take away from the fact that a recovery indicates, and this is the point that I want to make to Sanjay and Shankar, that the scarring of the economy has been minimized because we are getting back to 1,20,000 crores of GST means. I am not disputing the fact that 10-20% of the economy has been hit, or 8% or whatever it is. But the fact that the remaining part of the economy has rebounded is a good thing. We may dispute other things, but this is a good thing. The other point I just want to make to Shankar's point about fiscal. Look, I think the fiscal damage and the fiscal hit is already done as far as 21 March is concerned. The next year is going to be a year where the government is going to have plenty of revenues, tax revenues, GST revenues, all the revenues are buoyant. If you're going to grow at 12% nominal or 13% nominal next year, revenue, the fiscal deficit problem is a problem of 2021, not a problem of 21-22. The challenge for resources is not really to address next year, it is to address the medium-term fiscal consolidation, taking the -7.5 contraction and the 14% fiscal deficit that we will carry over. So the point that is really a real point here is not about the fiscal deficit for 21-22. It is the medium-term fiscal consolidation over the next 3 years. That is why I started in my preliminary conversation by saying, how do we make sure that this budget delivers growth of government revenues and the ability to deliver growth and fiscal consolidation over the next 3 to 4 year medium-term pipeline. So I don't think, Priya, this is a 91 moment. I think this is a very different kind of an opportunity. To take a point that Sanjay said, we have to break out of the 7.5%, 7% growth mindset and architect a strategy for a double-digit growth for the next 3 to 5 years. And so to that extent, I don't see it as 91. I see this as actually 2021, a new opportunity for India given the tectonic changes that are happening in the geopolitics of the world and world economy and the world trade.
So there is an opportunity, whatever you want to call it, for something new to be done. That at least we all agree on. But Sanjay, you want to take up some of the numbers that Rajiv has come up with?
No, I mean, I think the real issue is on the short, how do you get out of the short-term slowdown, which is the effect of the lockdown, and how do you get out of this long-term trap? The long-term trap is what worries me.
Yes.
I don't think the collapse of the economy of to -7% in 2021 is a real challenge for us. The real challenge is the decline in the investment rate to below 30%. I think now 28-29% is the number I've seen, coming down all the way from 37% of GDP, and the decline in savings rate. Now, to reverse the savings rate, you have to instill confidence in the people of India that in fact the economy will go to 7.5%, 8% over the next few years, that incomes will increase, employment opportunities will expand. Why do people save in the future rather than spend today? Is because they have extra income being generated and expectations of income. So you're willing to take risks, you're willing to borrow, you're willing to invest. So how do you get out of this mindset that we are in a slower growing economy? That's the mindset we have been stuck in. And I think the problem for this government will be that in the last 5-6 years, they have promised more and delivered less. And they're stuck with that reputation. I remember Manmohan Singh used to always say, we must promise less and deliver more. The economic consequences of promising less and delivering more are always positive. The economic consequences of promising more and delivering less are negative. So even if you now tell people of India that, next year the growth rate will be 8%, how many will believe given the track record of the last 4-5 years? So instilling confidence in the economy, convincing them that, look, okay, we made mistakes, but we understand we made mistakes and we have a way forward. We want the economy to be $5 trillion, as the Prime Minister said, by 2025. We understand it's challenging, but in order to get there, we are doing A, B, C, D. My only advice to Nirmala Sitharaman is don't waste your time telling us what you've done in the last 5-6 years, which is precisely what she did in February 1st, 2020, when she devoted half her speech to the past, to what they achieved, while a budget speech should be about what you're promising and what steps you're going to take going forward. So I think it is a great challenge of convincing people that, for example, businessmen, the animal spirits of enterprise. How many Indian businessmen are actually willing to spend that cash which they have? Indian industry is sitting on cash, which is everybody's putting into the stock market and the markets are going up. How many of them are putting into greenfield projects? Where is a new capacity expansion happening? Those are the things which we need to get going. And I think it's extremely important to be able to be convincing, to be credible, to rebuild confidence. I'm afraid there is a lack of confidence in the management of the economy, as I see it.
And we're going to take a break and come back. And actually, in fact, I was discussing another show, and one of the advice for Nirmala Sitharaman was that she keep her speech short. So that's another advice that's coming from the. But after a short break, I'm going to come back and hear what Shankar has to say. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, we are here discussing the upcoming budget. So, Shankar, supposing Nirmala Sitharaman is listening to this, what is the advice, or what are the points that you feel that the next budget should be looking at?
The simple thing is that she has to find a bridge between the expenditure and the income, and that bridge has to be sustained by pillars of growth. And so, how does she do the architecture of that? That is a question that requires a new kind of thinking. I don't know how much input she's got from the Niti Aayog or the other people, and what is the input from the state governments. Because one of the things that India needs to recognize now is all the reforms that need to be done are at the level of the state governments. In fact, the farm laws, the entire issue came up because even though the BJP is in power in 15 states, none of the states were pushing for what was necessary to be done. And it was Prime Minister Modi who took the reins and did what was needed to be done. Now, where it is and how it is being dealt with is a separate story. Similarly, on labor, on power reforms, on land acquisition issues that are haunting, those are issues that need to be. So the real hard post-1991 reforms are all in the domain of state governments. You must remember that every inch of India is ruled by state governments. And state governments are the governments which deliver. So if you want to improve healthcare, you have to find ways to fund the state governments and get them to release the money to the local governments so that you can vaccinate people or treat people. Similarly, power, water, all the issues that we face. If we solve the problems of the ordinary Indian, we will get growth. That is the simple answer. How do we solve the problems of the ordinary Indian? And that will create employment. So we have to also know that the constraint of the government is both in what it has and how it can raise resources. So over the last 6 months, we've heard several times that privatization is happening, Air India is being sold tomorrow, day before yesterday, and last week, and all those stories. But it's not happening. I mean, because there is, and I mean, it's much more difficult now to sell an airline than it was, say, in 2019. Similarly, the issue of how do you fund growth? What are the kind of, would this government take the big step and say harness taxes from the dollar billionaires? Those are the questions that people are looking for. The average person understands that there has been a shock to the economy, that COVID has affected the whole world. The question the average person wants to know is, how does the government address this issue? And one
Get
question,
Rajiv into this also quickly, huh?
no, one question that everybody wants to, I mean, most people in the middle class, the salaried people are wondering about is, post-COVID, how are we going to rejig the medical insurance story? Everybody who has renewed his medical insurance has seen the rates go up. So is the exemption. I mean, those are the questions that the average middle class Indian is looking for, whether my job is there, whether my mortgage is coming down. So those are the issues. But the long-term sustainability of the economy in a world where trade is being nearshore, where climate change will affect capital flows, those are the bigger questions.
I think basically the whole lot of lists where the government can spend, but where will the government raise the money from? That's also a worry. Disinvestment is clearly not working. So what else? How else will it be able to fund all these projects?
No, which projects? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So where will we need to increase spending? So how will the government do that? Is it going to, should we expect the private players, people to?
Yeah, I said at the beginning, I think we are underestimating the revenue growth in the government's revenues in 2021-22. If we expect nominal growths of 13-14% or around that territory, the government revenues grow by that much. So the headroom for the government to spend will be intact. Now, I think the question that you are asking without being explicit is what about the additional spending that the government has to do to create assets, private investment, and sustainable growth over 3 years. And I think that we should wait for the budget, because I am, frankly, as much as I'd like to pretend that I'm government, I'm not government. I'm a low-level member of parliament of the party that is in power, and I'm a spokesperson. But I think I can tell you a few things that I think will definitely be clear after the budget, and I'm hazarding a guess. One is that the budget will lay out, budget and the announcement subsequently will lay out a trajectory for the next 2 to 3 years of growth. It's not going to be 1 year of growth and another year of disappointment. And I think I go to what Sanjay's point about disappointing. I think disappointment may be the end effect, but the causality of the disappointments in the last few years have been the dysfunctionalities in the financial market. The public sector banking system that was inherited, that was broken, and despite 2.5 lakhs of recapitalization, continues to be risk averse because they don't want to go back to the NPA days. The NBFC, which was providing up to 40% of incremental credit in the years of 15 to 19, imploding because of ILFS and DHFL scams. So understand that underlying causalities of slowdown that Shankar was talking about were the dysfunctionalities in the financial system that had crept in over many, many years. I personally feel, if you ask me, high on the top of my wish list of things, and I say this in my personal capacity, would be a significant expansion of the financial sector. not just in terms of size, but in terms of intermediaries. And I would really like a lot more than just this dependence on public sector banks, which are now catering to 70 to 75% of all credit to the economy, to be diversified, and we have more entities that are able to deliver credit, like maybe the old style development financial institutions, which we really miss in this country. In the old days, when I was an entrepreneur and I set out to build infrastructure, I could go to an IDBI and I could go to an ICICI and propose an infrastructure project and get loans. Today, you have to go to a private bank who looks at this and this asset class and compares it with a car loan or compares it with another type of a corporate loan. So I think there is a need to focus on the financial sector, and this debate and conversation really needs to be on that, because money finally, credit finally is the raw material for any economic growth. It's the fuel. And for many, many years, we've had problems there that have been legacy problems. We're only beginning to solve it now. But to answer your question in a nutshell, I don't think this country has ever been short on resources. I personally feel there is enough public assets, public money. There have to be creative ways that we try and monetize those assets for the good of the economy and not for good of a few billionaires. So I hope that over the next few months we'll see that roadmap being created.
That reassure you a bit, Sanjay?
No, yes, actually, I agree with Rajiv Chandrasekhar.
Wait till the 1st of February. This is reassuring Sanjay.
No. But nevertheless, that is reassuring. So I would say that the idea of development financial institute is something I have always endorsed, and I'm glad to hear Rajiv talk about it. I think it's a very important, institutional interface that was available, which we have no longer there and requires to be rebuilt. And completely with Rajiv on the idea of a development financial institution. And also I agree with him that, money problem is not money. Money is a problem for the government because of revenues, but we are being assured that there are adequate revenues. Let us see. But there's a lot of cash in the country and there's a lot of cash in the world waiting to come to India. A lot of foreign investors will tell you we're looking for projects, we're looking for markets. Is there enough demand in India so that if we invest, there is an offtake? So I don't think money is the problem. And to conclude, Priya, since you mentioned that I have this new book, let me use the opportunity of marketing my book on your show. This is called Beyond COVID Shadow. And the unique thing about this book is I've got Vivek Debroy, Rajiv Kumar, Amitabh Kant, Ananta Nageshwaran, all from the government, and critics of the government, C. Rangarajan, Hasib Drabu, Subramanian Swamy, a severe critic of the finance ministry, all of them writing in this book, very diverse set of views. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do commercial for myself.
On that note, thank you all for this conversation, and well, let's see what the budget brings for us, and we'll have another round after that. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.